So welcome to chapter 10. Today we are going to discuss about characters, CS strings, and more about the string class. We have already touched a little bit of what a string is as a data type, and today I'm going to just open it up with more detail. Definitely practice more programs on Visual Studio. So stay with me. Make sure that your Visual Studio is active while I am practicing explaining. Please do the same to ensure you guys are taking enough benefit from this lecture. I'm going to start with some character testing. We do have a bunch of functions. We are already familiar with some of them, and today I'm going to even introduce more. Also, some of them I touched them in other sessions during other examples that I usually solve for you. But today I'm going to look at whatever function that you need in order to just complete them. You need to have the CC type header file. Okay. So something like is alpha, is alnum, and so on. These are what we call them. Any of this starting with is, like is digit, is lower, is print. Most of them, not all of them, most of them, they mean exactly what they mean as a word. Like for example, is lower or is upper, or even a space whenever you want to use some space, or for example alpha, or let's say num. Most of the time the exact functionality of that function is exactly what the name means. Like for example upper or space or lower and so on. Let's look at the first one. Anytime that you are going to use function, simply if you are using is alpha, simply means true if any argument being addressed in here is a letter, and if it is not a letter, if it is not like alphabet, alpha in here doesn't stand for, let's say, alpha like this, right? Simply means alphabet. Is alpha means is it alphabet? That's why we say if it's a letter, it's true. Otherwise, it's false, right? Similar in here. I'm using nom, right? Nom is talking about a digit. Is a letter the first part, AL nom. AL is very similar to alpha, and nom is standing for digit. Means is it alphabet or digit? If so, it's true. Otherwise, for example, if it is a double, means a number with decimal, then it is false, and so on. Shortly, we'll put them together in order to complete some example. I'm going to clean my Visual Studio. You may want to do the same. So for example, I leave the backslash in front of my line because I just simply want to write some of them, some part of the code, not a whole code. If I don't use backslash, it will be considered as a line of a code and I'm going to get some errors. So that's why I'm using backslash. How do I use either of this function? I simply use, for example, it's an conditional statement. I would say because it should be true or false means I have to use it in a conditional statement. If else, like for example, while or nested if or something like that. I'm going to use if. I open my parentheses, so I would say is alpha, again, is alpha means is alphabet. Is it a letter? And then definitely I'm going to have an input. That input is going to be something. Either I can just see inside, either I can just have the input inside the code. If it is an input inside the code, I just call input just to be considered as a variable. If it's not, I can see in it after the compilation process. So any input I'm gonna just have in here. In this case, let's say, in this case, I'm gonna say C in that one, okay? Suppose that I'm asking C in get input. Input is going to be my command, and right after you are going to compile, you are going to get some pop-up to have like some scene in there. Now I'm asking, is it alpha? If it is alpha, then I can go ahead and say, now go ahead and just see out. I'm going to just again add like slash to beginning of all of them, just simply because these are example, not a full code. So I'm going to say, then see out something for me. Maybe I'm going to say see out this is true or anything, right? Something like that. So this is the method we use any of this function. This function are going to validate your true and false situation in any argument, in any statement. That's how you can use them. That's what we call it, as I mentioned in here, that's what we call it character testing. There are some characters I have no idea. It's a space, it's a digit, it's an alphabet, it's upper, it's lower, or whatever. I simply put it inside some conditional statement and validate the state of that character, which we call it character testing. Let's go ahead, just use those characters that we just became familiar with in a case conversion. What does that mean? Simply means, first thing first, I need CC type header file. CC, you know that anytime that we are starting a code, we start with hash include, like in this case, I'm gonna say CC type, right? You can add any other let's say libraries or header file based on the requirement. But in this case, I'm looking at character case conversion, CC type means character case. So CC types, the first two C's in here, they are standing for character case conversion header file. So definitely I have to use char. I'm going to get rid of these lines. So definitely I have to use char, for example, in here, char standing for character. Then I'm going to say my character one is going to be just H. Second one is going to be E. Third one is going to be like anything. You can just use number. You can just use maybe a space. You can use question mark or whatever. It's going to be considered still as character in here. Now, if you're going to look at here, two lower, remember I said most of these functions, they just exactly in here, I have it two upper. Two upper means take H in here. This is upper, right? Take H in here, which is character one. If it is not uppercase, convert it to uppercase. But in this case, since it is already uppercase, it will print out the exact same H. In here, since I'm using two upper, means take character 2, whatever character 2 is. If it is lowercase, then convert it to uppercase. In this case, character 2 is like lowercase e, so it's going to be converted to uppercase e. And here the same. But that one is to upper, means convert any of this to uppercase if it is not already uppercase. But if we want to do the opposite, definitely we can use to lower. Here, I'm having the same inputs, which is capital A, or let's say it's uppercase H. Uppercase H must be in this statement converted to lowercase. That's why I use to lower. But since in this case, E is like initially by itself, by default is lowercase, it will be exactly as it is. It won't change because I'm using to lower. So far you learned one function in here which we usually use it in order to convert any character to uppercase. And if we are going to do opposite, we can use to lower. Most of them are something known for the Visual Studio. And in any time we want to use something like that, we have to use CC type library. Otherwise, it won't work. Now let's look at C string. C string is in a situation so far in here, we just got to know a little bit about some characters. But there are situations I want multiple characters to be just back to back. That's what we call it a string. Still is a character, still is like letters, but multiple letters. That's what we call it C string. So it's a sequence of characters. It's more than one character. Anytime that I have more than one characters to be stored in the memory location, we call it a string. Definitely, if we are dealing with some a string, still we need, look at here, we need these quotations to just enclose that certain a string. We call it also double quote. Either you say quotation or just quote, double quote. Let's look at one example in here, and then definitely I'll put together a full example on Visual Studio for you. So far, you can remember in other lectures I taught about array. What was array? Who can remind us? Array is any variable that I need to initialize the size of that variable, which is like opposite to, for example, regular array. Irregular variable. Regular variable, I just define it like the one in here, like size. I can say what is the content of the size, but later I need to initialize the size of that. Size in here is a variable, but when I say size of size means size of this variable. Now let's just practice one piece of program together to ensure everybody can understand what I'm talking about. Like always, I'm gonna start with, can keep this just right in here, but I'm gonna start with hash. You may want to start practicing with me. Hash include IO stream. Start with hash include IO stream. It doesn't hurt if you want this one in here. In this case, still I don't need it because I'm going to put together a program to display a string being stored in a character array. I'm going to leave it in here to store a string being stored in a char array, right? Let's do this together. So I'm going to write after that using namespace std and close it with semicolon. And of course, I'm gonna start my main function. Open and close your parentheses and your curly bracket. So I've got my template done, and usually I'm always closing with return 0. So in advance, I'm gonna leave that return 0 in there. And now I'm gonna define, since I'm dealing with array, I'm going to deal with array. Definitely first I have to define some integer to define the size of that array. So I'm gonna say, I can define it as a constant. Const is integer. Size of array is always integer. You can never use any other data type. It's always integer. Constant integer. I'm gonna say size, and I'm gonna assign maybe 80 to the size of this array. And right after that, since I said I'm gonna have a char array, a character array, so I'm gonna use char, and then I'm gonna label name of my array line, open and close my square bracket, which is the symbol for creation of array, and simply use size inside it and close it up with semicolon. So this line is helping me to hold a line of some input. Still, I do not have those input, but later I'm gonna see in the inputs right after the compilation process. So I also need to have some loop. Remember, always I said whenever you are going to have some loop or you are going to have some counter, definitely you must define a variable to be used in order to define your minimum and maximum inside the loop. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck at some point. So I'm going to have another integer to count, and I'm going to start it from 0. You may assign it to start from 0, or later you can do that as well. I simplify the process. I just start from 0 right from here. So I'm going to get the line. So here I already said I'm going to just use some character to hold the line. Now I'm going to get the line. Get the line simply means see out some information for me, maybe a question or a command to enter a sentence, enter a line, maybe enter a line or whatever you would like to. And since this is array, this is important to respect whatever size you have that for that array. I always say I want it, since I'm gonna start from 0, now I want it to end at size minus 1, because it's going to start from 0, size minus 1, including 0, still it's going to be 80. Make sense? So why do I say size minus 1? Because it will start by 1 off. And still I'm going to have size 80 if I start from 0. And right after that, I'm going to say what this is. So I would say these are the characters, maybe colon, backslash n, and of course you can just have semicolon in here. This is colon. It doesn't really matter because it's inside, but still I want this to be my characters to be printed out just right in front of this one. So now it's time, remember I said I'm going to get a line. It's time to say cin dot. What do I use in here? I'm going to get a line. Cin dot, which kind of function I can use to get a line? I can say cin dot gets line, right? This gets line is a known function. Cin dot gets line. And now I have to open parentheses. I'm going to say what my line is because I already have my variable, which is an array, to be line, right? And I have size. And I can close it up with semicolon. Make sense so far? Right after that, I'm gonna display the input. I already had the get line. Now I'm gonna display the input. How do I do it? Again, I have to use cout. And of course, if you would like maybe some message, I'm gonna say the line is, I'm gonna have some colon and backslash n, and I'm gonna close it up with semicolon. Remember, I already said I'm going to start loop counter variable. Loop counter variable, my variable is going to be count. It's time to use it. So I'm going to use while for looping. While line supposed to be, look at your line, supposed to be an array. So I must use it exactly the same way. But what do I include inside the array? I won't include size anymore since I'm going to loop. So I must start from 0. That's why in here I'm going to say count, right? So this is going to be count. And then right after the square bracket, which is defined in the array, I would say not equal. And then since I'm going to use some characters in here, single quotation, backslash 0, right? And this is why definitely in here I have more than one statement, so I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna open curly bracket. What do I want? I want to see out that exact line, which is going to be array, and inside still it is count, and I'm closing the line with semicolon. Remember, this is a counter. Counter must be accumulated. I'm gonna start from 0 and I'm gonna stop at 79. Therefore, I have to have my count to be accumulated to be able to start from 0 and stop at 79. And I'm done at this point, right? So I look at everything, I see everything seems correct, no error. I've got my green check mark, so I'm good to start debugging. I have to first receive some message, a pop-up question to enter a line, and then based on whatever I'm entering, it's just trying, still working on it. Here we go. So this is the question, enter a line, right? Enter a line 79 characters. So now I have to say, for example, hello class, or something like that. So then I will get, the line is hello class. Hopefully everybody got the same result. If so, you may want to just have some hands up or any reaction. That's much easier for you to make sure everybody learn how to get a line and how to store a string in a character array. So next I'm going to talk about a library function for working with CString. I already just touched CString before in other examples. CString can be used as a header file as well, right? How do we use it? Simply we have to say hash include CString. That's something that we can use. But if I want to use it as, let me just bring in some more information in here for you. If I want to use it as function library, which you can see it right in here, I have to use, in order to return the length, I have to use a string, str stand for a string, and then length, right? So this is the way that I can return length of the CS string or length of that sentence that I am using in order to report, like for example, any name in here, how many characters I do have, or what's the size, or what's the length. I simply can just use str standing for a string, len standing for length. So I should say maybe character city size, the way that I have this character in my Visual Studio for me in here is character line size. Now I can go ahead and give it maybe some name or some characters, and I can ask for that character. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I ask cout str length like line, then definitely let me just practice it with you right in here. I'm gonna just give some name in here, like to practice that one. Maybe I'm gonna say maybe I'm gonna just put this on the side to make sure you can see both at the same time. So I'm gonna say just simply open your code, double quote, give it some name, and then close your sentence or line with semicolon. Right after that, you can go ahead, maybe even in here, see out, use str standing for a string and len standing for length. And then I'm looking at, like, for example, in this case, I'm looking at line, then to simply say line, and then come out of here, close it with semicolon. So I'm gonna just, for making it easy in here, I'm gonna start commenting all of this line. For this example, we don't need them. So I can add backslash asterisk in order to just comment all of this section and only have this part being active. And I can debug quickly. That was a reminder how you can quickly comment multiple lines at the same time. So look at here. It's just counting whatever characters I have inside this code and it will print out. I need somebody to say why 6? Kimia has 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I'm having 6 as the length of the character. Why is that? Any idea? Simply because a space is considered as one character. Because a space in here is also occupying some space on the RAM. That's why it's considered as an character or as the length of this string. That's why it's printing 6. So next, what if I am looking to just, for example, strcat, right? Or maybe, for example, any other function, you simply use them with str at the beginning. And then, for example, in here, strcat, str1, str2, both of them are standing for a string, but in this case here, they are variable. They are not function. Just in here, this is a function. So it's going to append str2 to the end of str1. In case I do have two string, like in here, for example, one is size, location is this one, and then the state is empty. And then if I say strcat, take location and state, means just have one at the end of the other one. That's why we use strcat. strcpy, CPY copies, a string copy means copy a string 2 into a string 1. Have a string 1, for example, to be like this name, and then use a strcpy to copy a string 2 in a string 1, and so on. There are situations we can use two C string inside each other, like for example, a string means find the first occurrence of a string 2 in a string 1. Simply means if you do have two string, let's say they do have common letters, then find that common letters. That's why it says find the first occurrence of a string 2 in a string 1. For example, in here, my string 1 is Wabash, my string 2 is ABA. So it's going ahead, it will just compare them. Since in here I do not have W, it will just ignore it, and it will start from the beginning of the common characters or letters in the two string that I'm comparing. So in here it will start from ABA, and it will continue with the one that it doesn't have, like for example, even common similar letter in here. So it will just have ABASH as a result. Means Just go ahead, find the first occurrence of a string 2 in a string 1 and continue from there, regardless of how many more characters you do have right after that. Still include them, but do not include anything before that. Like, for example, W. That's what we call it. A string, one string inside another string. Next, we can look at some numeric conversion function. Still, we are going to use some function, CSTD. CSTD library, we already know one of them, a std library in here, right? So we need CSTD library header file for this one. In there, we were using a string at the beginning and then any other command to continue with. When we are looking at numeric conversion, we have to use at. So we are going to convert C string to integer. So at, since we are going to convert to integer, we use at o integer or to integer, to long, to double or float. Both of them are the same. And the last one, to, for example, parameters or alphabet. So this is the way that we are converting a string to a numeric conversion. For example, inum is an integer. Lnum is still a variable, but it's starting with data type long. Long is a data type. Double is a data type. So now I can say first, which is inum, at integer means put any number in here, which is a part of inum, in this case 1 to 3. In inum means assign this one to this. Here is long, means assign 5, 6, 7, 8 to lnum because it says at ol, right? If it is f, means this one is coming with decimal. It's a double, means assign this one to double, right? And so on. This one I already explained it. And let's write your own C string. Before that, if you have any question, feel free to ask, and then we can go ahead and write our own C string handling function. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Then let's go ahead, clean up the screen. We don't need any of this anymore. And we can start defining another program. So I leave this as it is. I'm going to create a function. Therefore, a function, I can start from scratch right from here. I don't have anything to do with the previous example. I leave the main function as it is to not to get error. And I'm going to say, how do I create some function? How do I write my own CS string as a function? So I would say void. Remember I said we have to use a string, but in this case, a string for now is going to be a string copy, is going to be my function name. It's a string copy. So I'm going to say this is the argument in here is a character. So I use char. A string, again, a string 1 is going to be my variable. And I want this variable to be array to make sure I can remind you a little bit more of array. And I'm going to have another character also to be my string 2. This is also another array. And right after that, I'm going to start my function. So I'll bring it up and maximize it to make sure everyone can see clearly. So I'm going to define some loop counter inside the function. So I would say integer. Either you can use index or you can use count or you can use whatever variable. It doesn't matter. And like Regular, I'm gonna start from 0. This is a loop counter. Next, I'm gonna step through string 1, right? This is my string 1. And I'm gonna copy each element of a string 1 to a string 2. How do I do it? So first I'm gonna check what my string 1 is, and then I'm gonna copy every single element of here into a string 2, right? And I'm gonna stop when the null character means when I have no more. A string means when I have null character. So now let's do it together. I start from 0, and then I'm gonna define some conditional statement like while purpose was check a string 1, which is an array, and I'm gonna start from the index, right? And continue. If it is not equal, remember I said I don't want it to not to be equal to null or 0, so I have to use single quote and use \n, means continue copying until you have no more left, no more string left. And then open your curly bracket right after the parenthesis and start saying, now you got your string inside the while. Sorry, this is 1. First, look at your string 1 and then copy a string 1 in string 2. Copy a string 1 in a string 2. And right after that, make sure that you have accumulator as well. So a string 2 is also array. It's going to be index being assigned to a string 1, which is going to be also an array index. Right? And it's continue with accumulation of index. So far, what I did in here, I defined a function, and this is extra. I defined a function, and I'm going to check my string 1, right? And continue checking it until everything is checked. I have no more characters left, and I'm going to copy that string in a string 2. And I'm going to continue until every single one is done properly. Now, how do I place a null in a string 2? I simply should say right after this one, I'm going to get out of here. I can simply say now take a string 2, right? Again, consider your variable or counter loop index. Assign it to null. Assign it the same like in here. Assign it to null. Exactly the same thing. And close it up with semicolon. You got the point? So now we can do the same. We can look at the first space or the null termination if there are no space. That's another example that we can work on it. So next is about a string class. How do I create C++ string class? So keep this right in here, and we can just go ahead, practice a string class. Before anything, anytime that I'm going to use a string, remember I studied in previous lectures, we have to include include a string. That's the first requirement, okay? So we have to use the library, definitely. If not, we won't get access to the syntaxes or keywords, and then we are gonna get error. So then right after that, a string is not only, I'm gonna do it right in here, a string is not only the library, we can also use, like for example in here, I'm gonna say hash include a string. That's the first thing that I'm going to use. Second, I can also go ahead, I'm going to clean up inside the main, and I can go ahead use a string as data type as well. Like, for example, give it a name, a string, maybe first name, or whatever. Either you can even see in the first name right in here, or you can have it like, for example, after the compilation. Either will work. So you are going to define some variable using the string type. And then you can just simply go ahead and define it maybe right after. You can say first name being assigned to your own name or whatever, and close it up with semicolon. This is how you define a string first as library or header file, later using data type, a string as an data type. Also, you can just get your compiler to see out your string, right? Similar to whatever we were doing. Like, for example, in this example, you can see it. See out your first name or your last name. You can just even compare the two a string. You can say, see out the one which is longer than the other one first or next. How? Using just the length. Remember, a string length. A string length, first get the string length function to check the length of the string, maybe a string 1, then check the length of a string 2, then compare them, right? That's how you can do it. Here, this little code in here is helping you to show the string class. I don't do this on the screen since I already did it in this example. It's similar, but different example. I'm using the header file string the way that I did it in here, and later I can use a string in order to use a variable, and I did this one right in here as well. And you can simply see out that variable. Now let's look at input into a string object, right? So we can use cin, like I'm gonna clean up to be able to just add more and have enough space. So first I define a string first name. Then I even said what the first name is right in here. This is one method, right? Another method is instead of having it like that, you can see in the string, you can say cin first name and then get the compiler to debug and give you the option to cin whatever the string is. That's another method, which we call it input into a string object. Still is working. It's up and asking me now cin. So I can again go ahead and cin my string. Both will be the same. Next, here you can see how to look at the cin and read the string. I just did it in here, how we cin. Same example. I mean, content of the example is different, but application is the same application. I just used one in here, how to cin the string. I just use cin and then the variable name, and I just compile, and after compilation I can cin my string. How to input into a string object using getLine. So far I used two methods. One method is just having it hard coded inside the code. Second method is using cin. This is two methods. There is another method like what I have in here, getLine. You can also use getLine. In the previous example, right, in this lecture also I used getLine again. So I can do the same in here as well. So I can just go ahead and use this method. First, I can say cout, maybe anything. I'm gonna say enter the line, and then I'm gonna just simply close this one. Or if you want to enter in the next line, say endl, and then go ahead use getLine. GetLine must come with the argument, so you have to say again getLine cin What do I want? I want first name. C in first name and then close it with semicolon. So for me, functionality is exactly the same. What I get is just an option in order to see in a first name. So you've got three methods to input into a string. Either have it hard coded or just use simply cin, or the way that I did it in here, get line, use get line and then enter the line. For example, Kimia or whatever. So you learned three different methods to input into a string object so far. Any question? I'm going to pause and take care of any of your questions. So far, we learned how to use three different methods in order to just input into a string object. Now, since now you know that, how we can have multiple string, let's start comparing some strings with each other. So suppose that I'm having again a string 1 and a string 2. Let's do this on the screen right in here. I already have a string 1, or let's say a string first name. Okay, so now either you can just have right after this one, you can just make it being assigned to a name like this, and then you can use just a simple comma in between, define another one. Or you can have in two different, completely different line. So I'm going to say a string first name, and then right after that, you don't need to use a string again, just simply use another variable. I'm going to say last name. And I'm going to assign it to another, maybe a string in here. And right after that, close it with semicolon. Simply, I've got one time use of a string data type, but two different variable as a string, first name and last name, and I assign some information accordingly. So now I'm going to compare this first name and last name. How do I do it? I can just, I don't need this part. I already just include the information. I can just go ahead, use if first name. I can just say first name is my string, is less than. I don't write is, I just say less than last name. Then do what? Then in here, see out for me. I'm gonna just have another command in here, first name, see out, first name, and then inside you can just put anything you want. Say first name is less than or is less, and before and all you may want to use last name right in here, is less than last name. So now I'm gonna just make this complete to make sure that my last name is longer than the first name and just get one true condition. Otherwise I'm gonna deal with false condition. So see out first name is less than last name. I'm gonna just have this last name. There should be some error in here. What is the error? It doesn't read the last name. Okay, I don't need this part. That's the reason. Okay, that's it. See how simply first name is less than last name. So you can go ahead, debug it. Take some time. It's going to check it doesn't give me anything simply because there is an error. So not in the code, there's hidden error. In order to get rid of that, we had this condition before. I'm gonna just take this whole thing, create a new project to be able, there was no error in the code. Sometimes the compiler is storing some errors, so I have to define. You may want to do this for any situation that you get something like this. You have to just define a new project. That's it. Otherwise, things are not complicated. So I have a string first name. There is just some error. It's gone automatically. It's trying to fix it. Here we go. You can go ahead and debug again. There is some hidden error. Okay, there is no error in the code, but it's going ahead. It will compare the first name and the last name. And if the first name is less than last name, it's supposed to just give me the first name, but there is some hidden error. It won't let the debugger to process, but still that's the way that we can just compare two simple string in terms of length of the string or size of the string. I can just go ahead, practice another example to make sure you can see the functionality. So I already have the IOStream and a string and namespace. I already have first name and last name, but either I can give the name the way I did, or you can just define them as just first name like this and last name, no information. And then we can see in the information, we had this practice before, either of them is just the same. So next, I'm gonna just again practice gets line with you. I can go say cout, enter a name, and right after that, I can say just gets line. You can do the same, or you can use just simply cin. Either will work. Gets line, cin, comma, first name, and simply close with semicolon, right? And then get another name. For another name, again, say cout. And then here I say enter first name. Here I can say enter last name and close it. And then again, I can use either gets line or just cin, gets line, and simply cin, last name, and close with semicolon. And right after that, I can display them in alphabetical order. In order, I already used if, I can do the same. So I can go ahead and say if first name, I'm comparing and then displaying. If first name is less than last name, then go ahead. In the previous one, I just wanted a true condition. Now I can make it if else. Then I can validate the false condition as well. So I would say if first name is less than last name, then cout simply just first name. Same thing that I did in the previous example. And then endl. And then last name. Again, I can say endl right after as well. This is one situation that I want. Else, or else if, name one for me is first name. Else if first name is bigger than last name, then go ahead, cout So this one is bigger. So then first do the last name. And then Endel. And then first name. And again, right after that, Endel. But still there is a hidden, I think. So if this one, else, I'm gonna type the else again in case for some reason I don't really need to have the else inside that. So else if first name is larger than last name, everything is correct. Another else, I got another else in here. Then you enter the same name. If both of them are equal, then you can say both of them are equal, or you can have like any other cout that you would like to include in here. Cout, you enter the same name, or the length is the same. Else, it is the same. Say it is the same. None of them are going to be just larger than it. At the end, you can again say ML. And that's it. So let's debug. Hopefully, technically, as you can see, I do have no error in the code. Technically, everything is correct unless there is some technical issue inside the Visual Studio, but the code is 100% correct. Yeah, here, this time we have it. Here we go. So it's asking me to enter the first name. So I give it the first name. Then enter the last name. Then it is just comparing them. So it will skip the first one simply because last name is bigger than the first name. Is skipping this part and it is considering else if. That's why it does show first the last name, then the first name. Hopefully you got the same result. If so, maybe some thumbs up to make sure everyone knows how to compare to a string and put them inside some conditional statement. Right after that, we can look at other definitions. I can close this up. I don't see any question in the chat. Is everyone here? Can you hear me? Is that clear enough? That's why I don't see question in the chat. Or do you want me to stop for you to ask any of your question? Feel free to ask. I will definitely pause for you to ask any of your, yeah, clear? Okay, so let's look at other definition of C string. For example, if you want to have an empty string object, you just simply go ahead, give it a variable to be assigned to the string data type. Later use either cin, either getLine or, to define what that name is. If you want to define the variable as a string, initially just you can just have it inside the parentheses, and definitely since it is a string, you have to include it in double quote. If it is letter, you have to use single quote, but a string must be double quote. If you are going to initialize just as in, like for example, your name, still you can do so. If you are going to have, like for example, only to have some consideration, for example, this is your name, and then you do want only to consider the first few letter of it, for example, for cout or so, then you can just add a digit right after. If you want, for example, to consider not only the like first two characters, so starting from the third one, consider the two character, right? So for example, my name, starting at position 3. Position 3 is here, and here means define a string, initialize it to 5. This is your variable, this is your string, and then you want 5 to be assigned to A. So this is just a character. That's why I enclose it in a single quote, not double quote. Pay attention about that. So operators are really similar to what we have for mathematical operation. We just practice. So for example, assigning, we practice how to use array, how to use greater, less than, equal, not equal, less than, equal. Some of them today we already used, but in here, extract character from a stream up to, like here, insert into means see out, see in, same as see out. Insert means see in, extract means see out. Here means you are going to just string on right to the end of the content on left. And for example, here you are going to have two strings, means add one to another one. Use plus in order to add one string to another one. So some of the examples in here, this is a regular definition of the string. Use a string data type. As you can see in here, give it whatever variables. And then you have the option to just assign some string. If you want to not to use this part, means assignment, you have to use parentheses in order to define the dog inside the parentheses. Now, suppose you've got word 1, word 2, and you are going to have your word 1 to be seen. Word 2 is already dog. So then, for example, you want your word 1 later to be hot, and you already have dog. You want to add them together, so this is going to be hot plus word 2 is already defined, hot dog. So then you can simply see out hot dog. That's one way you can assign your phrase to be accumulation or summation of word 1 and 2. Or you can have phrase plus equal, means get whatever from this phrase. In here is a hot dog, assign it to on a bun, then it will print out hot dog on a bun. You can put it inside some loop like this. You cannot start from 0 because this is a string. You have to start from 0 up to the, for example, maximum character. Hot dog on a bun. Let's calculate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But in here I have 16. Why is that? Because of the spaces. So this is 1, 13, 14, 15, and there is 1 in here, 16. That's why in here I say maximum is 16. So it's letters including the spaces. That's why 16 is mentioned in here. So then it will display hot dog on a bun. You have to make sure you give the right maximum. If you say only 12, then you may get some errors. So another piece of example in here, I'm gonna just quickly review it because I already had the comparison for a string for you. Then I can review the function, I mean file as well. That's why I'm gonna review this on the screen. We can use in order to demo the string class. A string class means use a string header file right at the beginning, the way I did right in this example. Go ahead to find your string. In this example, I do have 2 of them here on the lecture slide. You have like 3. Method of definition is exactly the same. Either you can assign value the way I did using getLine, using cin only, or just inside the way I did in this example. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, and then we want to just add them up. So here you are going to just kind of practice some mathematical operation on a string. So I get ABC here. This one is ABC plus DEF. So ABC plus DEF. But how do I display them? I would say first do the string 1. So this is a string 1. Then do a string 2 and 3 accordingly. And a string 3 is a summation of this two. That's why in here I have ABC plus DEF and so on. So this is the way that we can use mathematical operation. So I'm going to quickly review member functions for a string as well. So far we had like str for some of the function to be added to the beginning of it, like for example str long, space, copy, str copy, and so on. But now we are going to use only assignments such as assign, copy data. These are also all like keyword. All of them are included in the string like header file. As soon as you have this one added, you can use either of this assignment. You can use append, clear, erase, insert. These are all keywords. You cannot customize any of this. You cannot use any of this as variable as well, because anytime you have header file, CS like a string, these are known for a string, then you are going to get error. So you have to be careful while you are using these keywords. If you want to look at some space to manage it, like for example, you can use capacity, empty, length, resize, size. We already have some of them for practice. If you are just looking at substring, means you have one string and then under that you're looking at substring, you can say find or sub str standing for a string. And for comparison, definitely you can use the keyword compare. These are not all, but these are the ones that are mandatory. There is more than like whatever you are seeing in this slide. These are more member function. If you are interested to learn more for the purpose of this course, these are good enough. But if you are interested to learn more, you can go back to the table 10.7 of your reference book. So let's just practice some of them right in here. Like for example, again, I'm having three variables as a string. None of them are defined in here. Word one is going to be seen after compilation. And then I'm going to use assign. Look at here, I had assign. Assign is the assignment. How do I use assign? I go ahead and say, like, I can just display it right in here. For example, I've got a string first name. I can go ahead and say first name dot assign. I have to use it like this. Dot assign. Pay attention. As soon as I said assign, it was showing up because that's included in the library or header file. Then I'm going to assign first name, but since it is a string, I must use double quote. Like for example, again, any name you want to include in here, and then just go ahead and close it with semicolon. So you have to say first name dot assign. Assign in here is going to be your function. It's going to be your member function. Or you can use, for example, again, anything like first name in order to use other functions. Like for example, append dot append, and then you can say whatever your, for example, last name is. Append with last name. Or you can use any other one, like for example, insert. You can say first name dot insert. So any of this function, if you are interested to use them for different purpose, you must use dot, then that function, then open parentheses and continue accordingly. For example, anything like class or whatever, and close it with semicolon. So this is the method in order to use for insert. So I have to have, for example, some numbers in here in addition to like whatever the string is. Insert from where? For example, from character number 2 or part number 2. So I already just used some of them in here, but you can also review together. What is the number? Where is the number? Oh, here, this one, I already said it in here. Number 2, you mean? Yeah. Look at here in this example, right in here. So anytime, I'm going to clean up to make sure that you can see it clearly. Someone is asking what that number is. So for example, in here, you can see I have my name and 3. This is my string. I'm defining a string, initialize it with first 3 characters. Although it's, let's say in this scenario, it's my name, but I'm going to initialize it with first 3 characters. Here, I'm looking at insert 2 from the second position, means from the second position. So next, so modify it from the second. All of them, append. I already also used append as well. Let me just show it one more time. Like in here, this one. Append. Look at this one. You can see even in here. Capacity, empty. These are like a space management, but if you are going to modify, you can use append, clear, erase, insert, and so on. Replace, swap, even for example in here. But anytime that you are using any of this, you may, for some of them, for example, swap, you must have two options, two parameters inside the argument, because you are going to swap something with another thing. Therefore, you have to have two options. Next, this last simple example. So, for example, I'm going to clean up here and practice this one with you, and then we can close the string and quickly go review file together. So I'm going to just clean up here. All I need is just a string. I already have first name. I'm going to use the same string, and I don't need any of this, and cout. So I'm going to say enter first name, and then I'm going to say cin first name. It's going to be very similar to this example, not exact similar, because I want you to learn the concept. So right after that, again, I'm going to say cout. This one is just showing you how to look at the length member function, right? So then you can say cout, maybe your name. Your name is, and then I'm going to say, I'm going to look at the length. So I have to say first name dot length. Definitely you have to include parentheses and close with semicolon. This is how you can check the length. So you have to say dot length. So you cin, and then you get the cout, and right after that you can go, oh, I have a typo in here. You can go ahead and simply just finish it right in here and return 0. I don't need more, because the purpose is just showing you how to get the length of the first name. First, enter like name, whatever the name is, and then get the length of that name. It takes forever to debug, but it's here. So enter first name. I enter something. Then it will check the length, and it will say the length of the first name is 5. So this is it about a string. So I'm going to pause this one in here, and next I'm going to continue with file, input, output, file. Yes.